Hi, and welcome to the Up Zone where understanding politics is made simple. We are your three co hosts. Hey, Mr. Floyd,
How you doing, Chief?
turn your camera back on.
Mhm. Turn it on.
Hey,
Yes.
I'm doing well, Mr. Floyd. I'm doing well. How you doing, Ted?
Doing good, doing good.
Good. So again, I'm Tisha S. Waddell, former city council representative from the 3rd District in the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina, joined by Mr. Ted Moan, former city council representative for the 8th District in
Mm-hmm.
Fayetteville, North Carolina, and Mr. Elmer Floyd, former House representative for the state of North Carolina for the 43rd District. And yes, sir. And listen, y'all, my house is so divided right now on the temperature because one minute it's hot and the next minute it's cold. And I'm in my house and I'm freezing and my husband is comfortable. And then when I'm comfortable, he's hot. So, what are you guys doing with your thermostats right now? I mean, it is the end of March. What are we doing?
Nothing.
Just living, Chief.
No
Just
heat,
live.
no. You just living, Mr. Floyd?
Just going from day to day.
Okay, but are you going from heat to air or are you just like is it off?
Just living. Whatever it is, we just live.
What about you, Ted?
Um, I have my heat on, but dropped it down to like 65.
Okay, so you and Larry would be perfect roommates because I wake up in the morning and it's 66 degrees in my house. And I am immediately switching on the heat, just so y'all know, because I'm not gonna freeze.
That's why I
But
got
I
a sweatshirt.
digress.
A sweatshirt.
Right, you see me now. I'm in a sweatshirt. Okay, so listen, you guys. Let's get into the gritty in the city and a word on the curb. First things first. Ted, you put something on your Facebook page, and I had heard tale of this that Mayor Pro Tem Johnny Dawkins is not necessarily living in the district. So break that down to us what you were talking about and tell why it's important, that your representative actually be in the district.
Well, last year they sold their primary house, and then Mayor Pro Tem Dawkins entered into a 2-year lease for
Mhm.
a smaller duplex, which is a couple streets away from Terry Sanford High School.
Okay.
And um, yeah, this morning on the Fayetteville Observer online, Myron Pitts had a very good in-depth article about it, where he actually interviewed Johnny Dawkins, and so they did buy a house with their mother-in-law just on the outskirts, southern end of Raleigh,
Okay.
and so according to the article that Myron Pitts did, Mr. Dawkins pretty much does his business here in the city,
Mhm.
staying at that little duplex during the week, and then
Okay.
goes up to Raleigh on the weekends. And this is not uncommon when you look at people accused Paul Williams years ago of not living in the district.
Okay.
That's before I got on city council. And then former Senator Ben Clark, there was a accusation against him.
Yeah, but that was
Yeah,
cut and dry. I still
yeah.
don't understand how that like when I watched that I was befuddled as to how they did not find that he was not actually living in the district.
Yeah. Well,
And I watched that hearing and it still didn't make sense to me.
yeah, and the one I'm looking into now is County Commissioner Boos. Him and his wife sold their house last year. They now show that they're registered in his wife's son's residence in Linden. And someone called me
Did you
and
see the did you see the head
Mhm.
snap?
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
So they're
So
living with their son is what they're saying.
according to their voter registration data, I looked that up. Just it's updated every Friday, and they both are registered in Linden now, and not at their old house. So I'm looking into that.
Mr. Floyd, do you think that people care if their representatives actually live in the district?
Well, when I was young, there was a song say, "Reach out and touch someone hand." You and
Right.
Ted don't remember that song.
I do
And
remember
that
that.
Well, I
Make this
do.
world a better
Yeah.
place. I do.
Oh,
That's
and I stand corrected. Mr. Booth and his wife are registered in Stedman, not Linden. Stedman.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
People want their representative to be accessible. That's the key thing, accessibility, that
Okay.
they can communicate with their representative. So
See, and
that's
I understand the rule. I do get the rule. I understand completely. And I will say this. I don't know if you guys had ever heard the rumor, but I had heard the rumor that Mario Benavente was living with his girlfriend and wasn't living in the district. So I had been contacted by a lot of members from my community saying, hey, we're hearing that he doesn't even live in our district. Because if you guys remember when he ran for office, he was saying that he lived in his parents' home in the district.
Mm-hmm.
But there was all this other information that was coming forward that he was actually with cohabitating with his, and she does not lives in like District 5, which, by the way, his girlfriend, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the high power attorneys' daughters in our area. Our council is so messy.
well,
Listen, that
what people would say and use as verification. Where's my mail going?
yeah, and see, my question is, and we also heard this when Tyrone Williams was on council, because even when he ran again, because he had listed his address as some shoddy little house in District 2 when they were saying he actually lived in a really nice house in District 1. So like this is not, it's not new news, but it is
Mm-mm.
certainly, I don't understand why it's never cracked down on, because I don't care where you get your mail. I can have, look, I have an Airbnb. I receive mail there, but I'm not going to run in that district because I don't spend the majority of my
But I'm
time
saying
there.
that many factors that are used to consider a resident,
Hmm.
and just like the rule of thumb is, though a district may be split, a precinct may be split. Some say if it's split, Ted, where is the bedroom located? You
Huh.
see, so
It's
so
just
there's
messy.
different rules of thumb that they use to determine residence.
And I will say, and I agree with you, Mr. Floyd. I agree with you. But I will say this, I think that it even if nothing happens as a result of this, I think it highlights a character issue in all of the people that we've highlighted may not actually in fact be residing in the district that they represent. Because if you are manipulating the system in order to keep your job, that says something about what kind of person you are. It speaks to your character. It doesn't just speak to, and it's not that you're creative and you're smart and you know how to get it done. It is that you are manipulative and you are possibly a liar and you are not necessarily the best person that we need in these positions, because if that's your character, that's going to be your character in everything you do.
Well, Tish,
And
there again, when a candidate files, he or she lists their resident. Okay, that's the guiding instrument. Is the filing and the listing of resident. Now, if person go by there every day and pick up his mail or her mail, and sometimes you never see a car there in 24 months, a reasonable person would assume that the house
That
is
is not
vacant.
where you live. Hmm.
Yeah, there. And then again, you have a lot of people these days in time, will will do a what you all call it in stalking,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
other people call it on the internet patrol.
Yeah. We call it
That's what they,
research. Ted,
so
what were you getting ready to say about that?
oh, in Myron Pitt's article, it did say that Johnny Dawkins is looking at doing another 2-year lease of the duplex should he win in November.
But see, there's the thing. If you're saying should you win, that is really not where you live. Because if you don't win, you going home. But anyhow, anyway,
a
look,
reasonable
let's
minded person would assume that, TJ. A reasonable minded
absolutely.
person.
Absolutely. But let's move right along. Let's go ahead and talk about this landfill. What's going on with the landfill conversation, you guys?
Okay, let me share this graphic I did for. Let me see. Okay. Boop. Yep, I did this for Mr. Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
The landfill being the yellow, the city-owned land that they may be able to purchase is in red. The blue outlined areas are the residentials closest to the landfill, and the white boxes within the blue are the vacant parcels where there are no buildings within those two subdivisions. So I'll give this to Mr. Floyd because this is, he knows more about this than me.
Go ahead, Mr. Floyd.
Jesus, you look at the blue which Ted is talking about. Doing a
Mm-hmm.
ride through is 20 houses that's in that community today. Five of them are boarded up, and two are on some in some form of renovation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the blue area is next to the county landfill. I salute the county for having a vision because when we go into 2020, 2030 and beyond, that property will be of less value, and it will give the county an opportunity to expand its landfill. And as Ted mentioned, back in the back where you see the main railroad track there, and then to the right you see the red in which he has is the city landfill. It's
Mm-hmm.
perfect for the county to grow its landfill into 2020, especially if they're going to build a packing station and then line the city landfill, which is red, and then put it back, which would increase the storage capacity. And then you move over here to the blue part where those resident homes are going to be 50 plus years old there, and a lot of them today is uh, is 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 somewhat life expectancy won't last 50 years. So it's a perfect example of how the county is moving into that direction, is making that the Sanford. I'm speaking of the county of Sanford now. As they Sanford is the trash dump where most community carry their trash, and that
Hmm.
is it as a way in which the county can indirect grow the landfill because the land will be there and no resident.
So what I think I hear you saying is the game.
It's
I
playing the
really okay.
long range game to grow that landfill again, as Ted mentioned, city landfill. The large area that with the rest was the main area together. You people that Ted mentioned. Also, on that side, which, as you know, there was a problem with the amount of dust that they had there. So that's one environmental problem, and we had a large protest of that area. So what Faye Block Company did was move to the east of North Street Extension, and then if you look at PWC water plant, it's right on. And then adjacent to that is where it used to be a tax plant, in which the contamination of that plant. So
Okay.
it's just what you call environmental racism.
Okay. And it continues. It can
Yes.
let everybody know that's watching us that right now we did lose your camera feed, Mr. Floyd, but it has to do with your internet, but we can still hear you perfectly. And so just keep talking. We're getting a notification that says that your live video will return as soon as your internet like picks back up and catches back up with your audio. So everybody, he's there, he is, he's still with us. But I just wanted to make everyone aware of what's going on. So if you see any of us drop off, you'll still hear us, but you may not see our lovely faces this morning. So that is that's really good information for people who live in that area, because, or even if you don't live in that area, but you just need to know what's going on. You need to be aware of the long range planning in your community, because it tells you how you should be making decisions that developers are always conscious of. They are always conscious of what long term plans are for a community. And it shows where to develop is trying to be keyed into the more upper line areas of a city will be. You watch those patterns and you'll really be able to get a good feel for that. But this be a dump. Like that area is just the city and county dump, and it's just gonna be what it is. And there's really, it doesn't appear that there's anything that anybody can do. Now, am I wrong about that?
Well, we have that is a minority community, and we have minority representation on the county board of commission, and also on the city council. And I leave that thought with you, Ms. Whitehead.
Well, I'm glad you segued us perfectly to where we're going next, and that's into our Human Relations Commission and the this conversation about Office of Community Safety. I know that the Office of Community Safety, as the City Council has been, some members of the council have been discussing it, is more about policing. But this most certainly could fall into that dialogue, because, as Mr. Floyd, you always point out, and Ted, you hear it too, the policing situation or the health and well-being of a community is about two words you always say: code enforcement. And so truly these are connected situations and connected conversations. But Mr. Floyd, what are your concerns about this Office of Community Safety that is being discussed, particularly by council members like Mario Benavente?
Well, let me say this to the two of you all. It's always good to have reasonable discussion. It's always good at all times. But the fact comes about when you start throwing numbers in the equation, then it becomes different. And Ted is that person that do that number crunching. So when you start doing
He's
that
our data guru.
crunching, it creates a problem. When you start asking a government to appropriate 1.5 or $2 million for a office, which many of those things can be looked at through the human relation. And Ted talked about it on our last week program about the money that that the city is going to lose once the county changes its tax formula. And so when you start talking about losing $10 million, and you're talking about reoccurring funding, and then you're talking about a word that most elected officials want to stay from, Ted, and that is raising taxes.
Before you guys jump into that, I'll tell y'all something. Y'all know I just told y'all my house is divided on the temperature, right? Y'all, Larry just walked in here and very discreetly plugged in a space heater beside me. So he
Well,
helped me stay warm and keep him cool. But go ahead, let's talk about these numbers and this budget, Ted. What are we looking at?
The blue numbers. Uh, the far left is from the budget. The general fund, $189 million. Now the overall budget is $249 million, but that extra money are in different funds that
Right.
recycling, stormwater, airport.
Specifically
There's
earmarked.
right. And so I just want to remind everybody, public safety, fire and police primarily, they make up $107 million, of the 189. And between those two departments, their personnel costs budgeted combined was 76 million. So we've all been on council or elected before. We always know the personnel cost across the city is always the highest.
Mhm.
So the little red negative numbers, since the the county and all the municipalities agreed on the sales tax. The city estimated to lose 2.1 million in the upcoming budget year 23-24, and then 2.7 in the fiscal year 25, and then when they go completely ad valorem, 10.5 million in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
So the budget, we all know they're working on it now, even at the state level. Let's count all the cities, towns, counties. So the city's already looking at a $2.1 million shortfall in sales tax this coming budget. And so while I like the idea of Office of Community Safety, because it's always good to hear good ideas from non-politicians, it's just going to be a financial struggle to put that in. And what I've heard in some of the presentations where they want to take it out of the police department's budget. They have a total budget of like 59 million, and of that 59 million, almost 48 million is personnel. And so they still have all their other, all their gas, they got to buy vehicles, new equipment, so where do you get that $1 to $2 million for an Office of community safety, out of the police department budget? I'm not saying it
Right.
can't been, but
Well,
just
Ted,
last
when
week,
we go ahead.
just last week, there was a public records request, and one of the questions were how many police officers budgeted and actual, and it's on the city's webpage. Right now, 462 budgeted and actual sworn officers, 393. So they're 69 short, according
Mm-hmm.
to the record I read on the city website.
But
I
if
read
we
it yesterday.
remember that there's been a real aggressive push to get the
Mm-hmm.
police department fully staffed because there were so many instances of like it was a burden on the police department to not have a fully staffed department. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to point out, when we talk about reducing or reallocating funding for public safety, I want to highlight two states that do this path and garbage now. And when I say garbage, I mean like the safety aspect in these communities is just almost non-existent, particularly when you talk about the urbanized area of these states. And that's Oregon and that's Washington State. And I know from experience because when we went to visit Oregon and Washington State, it was so uncomfortable downtown in the metro area
Mm-hmm.
because it was, and you really did not, there was no I remember being downtown in Washington State, and we were in Seattle down, and standing in a place that was a tourist landmark, and a person walked by me and they made an aggressive motion to me. Everybody else followed them. I was really glad that I was with my husband because my husband is a dude and he can be fairly immediately, like, because he was a few feet off, he immediately got to me. And then who was a local in the area walked by and they were like, yeah, be careful down here because not too long ago somebody got strangled by an extension cord. And me and him and I looked at each other and we were like, we need to get the heck out of here. Like it's like the wild, wild west. And that is what you can expect when you, first of all, devalue and demoralize you can take out your frustration on segments of the community on your police department. Now you need to have a standard, and there should be, and I've always said this, there should be somebody who polices the police. They should not be permitted to just go rogue, but you can cut in their budget and look for waste, of course, but you don't have and reallocating funding to this project or this, for sure what you're doing, because you will end up with a mess. I got a call, y'all, from somebody, and I won't mention their name because I don't know if they want me to or not, but I got a call and they were talking to me. They watched and they're one of the alder people, and they were talking to me about some things going on in Spring Lake, and they were talking about how they are working through to reduce waste in their budget. Are we
Mm-hmm.
seeing this in our council? And this is what I said to this person. I said, it's great for you guys as a board of, but what policies are you putting in place that require future boards to do this? If you've got a board of people who are conscious of this, but you need to have policies that force future boards to be conscious of reducing waste. So what are we seeing in terms, because it's budget time, y'all. So even as we're talking
Well,
about
see,
this,
let me ask you, you all on the council, and Ted just mentioned, and this is one thing at the state level also. Uh, there's 69, Ted mentioned that 60 plus positions that are unfilled.
mm-hmm,
Okay, so that's revenue. That is also going to help balance the 25 year 2025 2024 budget year,
mm-hmm.
because the money is appropriated, whether it's used or not, then back into the general fund and then re-scramble in the position that are unfilled. That's part of the equation, is help scramble the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
some would say, is it good or is it bad or is it ugly? Because the money has been appropriated there. So the question is, someone say, I don't, and I don't enter in conversation with defund the police. If any community need is the case, I can't speak for you and those
Man,
upscale
I'm with you, Mr. Floyd. If anybody need them, I need them. Yeah,
I need police
yeah.
protection. I
And when
mean,
I call, I need them to come. Yeah,
that that's the that's the concern. So don't talk to me about defunding police when I see person riding a two-wheel motorcycle on one wheel.
that's
Okay,
right.
when I see unlicensed drugstores. Okay,
That's
when
right.
I see trucks larger than my truck park on my street.
Parking in my neighborhood. That's
Okay,
right.
I need law enforcement. Wherein that I see how a person moves into a community that has grass in the front yard and two is just like clay, which is my property at the same time lowering the city property
Right.
tax. So I need
That's right.
all the enforcement that you can provide.
Now, Mr. Floyd, you shared an alternative, and I'm going to put this up on the screen. You shared an alternative with us. You said that it is possible for the city council to engage the Fayetteville Cumberland Human Relations Commission, and so I pulled up the information about what they're responsible for. Can y'all see that?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, very simply stated, this commission discrimination in any or all fields of human relationships. I would identify police interactions as human relationships, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
I would.
encourages fair understanding among all racial, ethnic, sex, and age groups. Maybe they should include mental health. As most certainly, that's one of
All
the
part
biggest
of it.
conversations.
It's all part
Right.
of it. It seems to me that I think Ted and I, we talked about the council appointing 55 or 50 plus people to the various boards and commissions. That's a lot of boards, a lot of commission, and a lot of reporting. To me, that this is just me, that group should have been challenged. Their concern through the Human Relations Commission, and let the Human Relations Commission bring that up. One of their goals going into process
Mm-hmm.
there is that becomes the sounding board for these citizen advisory boards, all these boards that has
Right.
a racial overtone. They need to be housed and carried through the Human Relations Commission. Truly, you wouldn't let a bus driver operate a bus without having CDL license,
Right.
some form of
But
CDL.
Mr. Floyd, I think the issue comes people want they want credit. And so
What do
I
you
think
want credit?
sometimes you have a council that thinks that they have the answers. And when you have an individual that thinks that they have the answers, they don't necessarily engage other entities to figure out what they think about that. But I think I've been thinking about this since you said it to me, and it just clicked. I get what you're saying. I think what you're saying is, instead of the council trying to figure out how to solve this problem, send it to the Human Relations Commission that you have appointed. Let them bring you back recommendations, and then select go from there.
Well, that's what they are there
I
for.
just got it, Mr. Floyd.
Okay, I mean that's what that's smart government. Government is ran through commissions and board.
Right.
That's why you appoint them. I mean, you can't do all the work yourself. So why not use the boards? Thank them. But what we want to do is appoint the board to do the job
And
for the
do their
board.
job. Micromanagement at its finest.
It's not good.
Mr. Floyd,
It's not.
Mr. Floyd, I just got it. It took me, you said this to me like early this week. I just got it. I get it now. You're saying run it through the people that you've put in place to run it through.
Yes. Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Ted, you got
That's
anything
good
to add to
government.
that before we move to Mr. Floyd's thank you up for the
Well,
governor?
no, I mean, when Sean McMillan and crew came before City Council over a year ago, almost two, and asked
Mhm.
about this, this organization, they came with good intentions. They
Right.
really are good intentions, but with these revenue losses coming up, I just think it's going to be difficult for the city council to prioritize what they're going to fund and what they're defunding or what they're going to raise taxes. It's just going to be a, two or three very tough budget years coming forward.
Yeah. And FAPAC made a couple of flaws that proved to be very detrimental to their organization. The first was that they really got behind and lobbied. What was that guy's name, Ted? Ended up being found guilty on a federal level, and they kept saying he was innocent, and they kept coming before us. The drug guy with the child care.
Oh yeah, yeah. When they
I can't even remember his. That
no,
was one huge misstep because they kept coming before us with the case that we were receiving information to the contrary of the facts that they were presenting. And that was a flaw. The second thing, the second, they let the mayor use them as a kind of a feather in the cap with no intention for him to back up what he was doing. Because I remember when he brought them before us, when all of that was going on downtown with the sit-ins at the market house, and all of the disruption was going on after George Floyd's death. The mayor brought this organization before the council with no real follow through in terms of what they brought before us. But he did that as in my estimation, as a look at what we're doing, look at who we're working with. And I was the only person on council who continued to say to Sean McMillan and that group, what you're asking for is not at our level. They kept placating. No, it wasn't just me. It was me and Chris Davis. We were the only two who were like, listen, you're asking for an oversight commission. We do not have the authority to give you that. But then they permitted and then kind of dropped the ball because they permitted the council to give them a watered down version of what they were asking for, and they didn't make any noise about it. So now here they are with this watered down version, this community advisory board. And I think eventually Chris Davis changed his tune and kind of started going along with community advisory board, but it was just they made some
You'll go,
missteps.
T, not to cut you off, T. You'll go with a community. Now, the key word you have to look at, T. One word: advisory
Advisory,
board. Advisory board. Okay,
which is the Human Relations Commission.
that's the purpose of that, T. Now, they wanted a board that would give them statutory authority to look at police personnel files. Okay,
And they can't get that from the city council.
okay, because as a legislator, you want things to come before you unanimous.
And
Okay,
you
and you're
have
not gonna get that.
you got to follow the law. And the law says that legally from the state of North Carolina, the city to give you that. But there were municipalities who lobbied their representatives in Raleigh and gain that authority. But they went
Well, you
about
have
it.
now you have some that have done that, but if you go back and look at whether or not these advisory boards have exercised the authority that was granted to them by the state, it's very minimal.
That's
It's
interesting.
very
And I
minimal.
think one day we should think about having Sean McMillan on our program so we can talk through all of that and see what's what. I think that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
and
Mr. Floyd, you
he's
want to
yeah.
go ahead? Go ahead,
Sean
Tim.
is Sean is extremely intelligent. I've met him a couple times, and he comes with his heart. I mean, so I don't think he's talking on emotion. When you watch him approach the city council, he is always level headed. He doesn't raise his voice. He's very
Wasn't Sean an
articulate.
actor at one point? Wasn't he an
No,
actor
he was a former military, I
or a
think, special
model?
forces.
No, I mean, didn't he have something? Wasn't there something? I
Oh, I,
think there
I don't
was
know.
something. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think he definitely has sharpened that skill. Like you are dead on when he has this carriage about him that is just impeccable when it comes to presenting information. You're dead on.
No, he's very good, very good.
So, Mr. Floyd, you want to say thank you to the governor, which probably won't happen. Let me pull up. Give me just a second. Let me pull this up because we want to give credit where credit is due. Let's you take it away, Mr. Floyd. You there, Mr. Floyd?
Tish, yes, this is a press conference that I held that asked the speaker back in the, I think it was 2019, to hear House Bill 655, which would provide health care coverage for about 300,000 North Carolinians. The Democrat was on board at the beginning, and when someone from the executive branch said they wanted 500,000 or nothing, my party then backed away from that via House 655. But House Bill
Mm-hmm.
655 came out of the committee 26-6. 26-6, it came out of the committee. But that's the same year that the Fayetteville Observer pointed out that if the governor continued to sign these many appropriation bills that he vetoed, we would not have any negotiation power for health care coverage. That
Mm-hmm.
was our strongest year that we could have gotten some form of health care coverage looked at because the governor had vetoed the budget. But we come back and we sign over 10 mini appropriation bills. So each appropriation bill, we weaken our ability to negotiate health care. So I want to thank the governor now for signing Monday the health care expansion bill. But the key thing that's going to remain there, Chief, is the other scrambled egg that's going to be placed in that budget for the governor.
Right, right. Because I read an article in the News and Observer that said that this Medicaid expansion it said it's tied to the passage of the budget.
Hmm
Let's see what kind of duking it out we're going to see as far as this budget, because y'all
Wow.
know historically, problem getting the budget passed.
Now, remind you now, the budget deals with numbers. Now, don't be surprised that you see a lot of language put in the budget.
Right.
And it may not be language in which the governor agreed with that tied to the budget. So the governor may veto it. He may allow it to become law without signing it because he disagreed with some of the language, not numbers
That's
so
in
much,
there.
but language.
Well, listen, I think we need to keep a close eye on this budget process. Mr. Floyd, if you'll jot down a note to call your friends up in Raleigh and see if any of them are willing to jump on our podcast to talk about this budgeting session with us, because we want to see how these new factors all kind of come in together and play a part in what we expect to
Well,
see. Because you looked at the budget. Did you see anything there for Fayetteville?
Well, it's 600 pages, so I did a word search for Fayetteville,
Mm-hmm.
and really the only thing I saw was Fayetteville State, $78 million in another project, and a little bit for Fayetteville Veterans Home. But again, I just saw it this morning, so I
Right.
I
So that's
need
a
to.
very high level look.
Hmm
Well,
Okay.
well, you won't remember now. The governor sent over a recommended budget to,
Hmm.
which is the House term now is to dissect the budget.
Wait a minute. Hold
And
up. Hold up. Wait. So this is the governor's recommended budget?
now remind you now, the governor sends over to the House a recommended budget.
Okay.
A
So here's the question
recommended
that I
budget.
have.
Huh?
Here's my question. The governor went out and grabbed Val Applewhite and said, "Come on, run," right?
Yes.
So wouldn't you think that in his recommended budget, he'd throw a bone to Fayetteville to make her look good?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying that is the governor recommended budget. I'll let you
Ted,
answer that question.
Ted, what were
Um,
you trying to jump in and say?
what I looked at this morning online was the House starting budget, and now it's got to go
Okay.
to all the appropriation committees. There's a whole bunch of them. They're all meeting today, this morning. Um, so they're they're what I understand is they're going to try to pass the House budget by next week after it goes to all the committees and all the amendments and all that. But Mr. Floyd could better talk how all those appropriation committees work, and then they each have their amendments, and then they have to bring it to the House for debate and everything. Or
Well, before
but
you do that, Mr. Floyd, let's take a pause, right back and break 60 seconds and play our ad, and then we will be right into kind of talking very briefly about that budget session, and then let's touch on this pistol permit repeal and ICE as it relates to the sheriff's department. Let's talk about that. But we'll be right back. Y'all turn your cameras off and take your 60 seconds, and we shall return.
Estate agent who knows looking for a real estate agent who knows the Fayetteville community inside and out? Look no further, as your hometown girl Latanya has extensive experience of our area and experience in its real estate market. Latanya delivers results. At LMR Realty Group, we all understand that buying or selling a home can be a stressful experience. When you partner with us, you control the decisions while LMR Realty Group guides the process, and together we'll work from contract to close with ease. Whether you're a first-time buyer, downsizing, or expanding your investment portfolio, LMR Realty Group has got you covered. As a bonus, if you call and go under contract by March 31st, LMR Realty Group can cover up to $400 for a home warranty on a resale property with all appliances included. Some exclusions apply. Don't wait. Call 910-574-8225 or visit ELLIMARRealtyGroup.com to get you started. Let's make your dream home a reality with LMR Realty Group.
Okay, so we are back with Upzone. We're understanding with your three hosts, Mr. Elmer Floyd, former representative for 43 in the state of North Carolina, Mr. Ted Moan, former city council member for the 8th District, City of Fayetteville, North Carolina, and myself, Tisha S. Waddell, former city council representative for the 3rd District and the City of Fayetteville, North Carolina. So this budget process, they're trying to push this quickly, you guys. Is this something I've been hearing that it should be something quicker than what we've seen in the past? Is that what you're hearing also?
I think that if they stay on track, they will probably will have it ready, for implement. And July 1, which is the fiscal year. They have been meeting ever since January. The various agencies reporting to the various subcommittees on appropriation. That they have been doing that, and they have already gotten, received a forecast about what the revenue picture looked like, and they already have set a target goal there. And the picture is that they have $3.5 million greater than what was projected. So right now, the appropriation committee are meeting again, and then the full appropriation house is going to meet, my understanding, this afternoon. If you're a member of the General Assembly, you're going to serve on two committees, finance or appropriation. So the
Mm-hmm.
appropriation committee is going to set up the rules in which to move the various appropriation bills through the appropriation committee. Very simply stated, you cannot move money from education and put it in transportation. The money must come from the same appropriation budget, and they
Okay.
would set a time that those amendments must be in uh, to be heard by the committee.
Okay.
Right.
So then
So
we'll just keep an eye on this. Go ahead, Ted.
yeah, so I just this is what's online this morning. The House Bill 269 House Committee subs, and it's dated this morning. So the way Mr. Floyd just explained it, all those committees now have to go through all this, and but they did make it public. The House, the Senate will come next, according to Mr. Floyd. But I just wanted to let people know that
And that's
it's dated.
639 pages. Six.
Yeah. And
So,
so that's why I did the Control F find and tried to find Fayetteville.
okay.
I'll
And
stop.
Okay.
remember, Ted, now that's just the first edition. You may
Right.
get 4 or 5 more
Hmm.
TV. Okay, you see, at least
So
one
we just
edition
got to
one,
watch
edition
it.
two, edition three. So you have to don't throw away one because you get 5. Because you're gonna have to see how that money and track your items to see whether or not your money is still in that document.
Okay.
Because it can be taken out unbeknown to you. So that's what is going to take place, and how many amendments they want to take, in that type of thing. So it will be an interesting process as they move through this budget. But the budget in itself, some said 3% teacher raise, some say a 10+% over a 2-year period of time, 11% for highway patrol, 2% for retirees, 7.5% for non-essential workers. So it has its good point for those persons who might go to the polls in the midterm election.
But none of this is guaranteed until it's finalized, right?
Yes, but please bear in mind, whatever the House, the Senate gonna be rejected. Don't even
Okay.
worry about it.
So
Don't
we
even
will
lose
keep
sleep
an eye.
over it.
Don't lose any sleep. We'll keep an eye on that process and kind of keep people. Last 2 points of discussion. So the first one is uh, the article that indicated that the North Carolina House passed a bill requiring sheriffs to cooperate with ICE. So when I read this article, I could not why anybody was against it in the first place. Like what are the cons, y'all? Because my understanding was if you are unregistered and this or this happens and this and this was like drug felony, murder, rape, like heinous crime,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
the sheriff was required to work with ICE to detain and turn you over to them. I'm missing why we wouldn't want to do that. So can y'all help me understand why there was a why? Because this is what I'm noticing. A lot of the things that the House do in the last session, they're bringing it back now and getting it done because of the composition of the House and the Senate, right?
Hmm.
So why
Yep.
was this something that was bucked against previously? Can y'all help me understand that?
Well,
What I read was it was only a handful of sheriffs. There's 100 counties, and it was 10 or less that.
And they said it was primarily the urban areas, the urban counties.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But I could be wrong, but that's what I read one time. It was 10 or less sheriffs
Aside
that.
from politics, though, Ted, aside from partisan politics, aside from the optics of illegal immigrants, what reason is there to not work with ICE to turn over offenders
Hmm.
legally in this
it's not the
country?
fact to turn over teeth; it's the waiting time. Many sure ICE they believe that ICE is supposed to come for whatever reason as it relates to what you just mentioned within 48 hours. So some said that if they post the bond to be released and ICE does not come there within 48 hours, then why should we hold a person beyond the 48 hours?
But
Or,
this bill wasn't requiring that though. The bill was requiring the 48 hours.
I'm just saying that when the issue first came up, it was the waiting, the waiting time, and sometimes I just couldn't get there within that time frame. Okay. They that time frame. So many sheriffs say it was an extra burden on them once those persons had met the process.
Because see, the way that I was understanding this, it was that under HB 10, sheriffs would be required to notify ICE if they can't determine a person's legal status after charging them with certain drug felonies, homicide, rape, or other sex offenses, kidnapping and abduction, human trafficking, certain assault offenses, or violations of a domestic violence protective order. Sheriffs would also be required to temporarily hold people for whom ICE issues an immigrant detainer. ICE uses detainers to inform local and state law enforcement agencies that it intends to take custody of people it has probable cause to believe are removable non citizens, according to the agency's website. Under HB 10, sheriffs are required to take people who are subjects of a detainer before a judge who would order the person to be held for 48 hours or until ICE either takes custody of them or rescinds the detainer, whichever comes first. So I see what you're saying when I read that because it's either 48 hours or when ICE comes. So you're saying that the argument was if ICE came in 72 hours, they were like, that's too long. We don't want to hold them. But now, Mr. Floyd, they'll hold somebody. It's somebody was in jail for a whole year with never having gone before a judge, and they were a citizen of the United States. So we'll hold
Mhm.
our citizens in debt, but we got to hurry up and let non-citizens go because it's an inconvenience.
Now let me
Make it make
say,
sense.
I mean, that there's a lot to the strain of those eggs. You have some sheriffs that agree with it and some sheriffs that do not agree with it, as you mentioned in the urban. But they were saying also that if they met whatever bond requirement, you know, that they met that, and then
Yeah, I'm
ICE
gonna say
doesn't show
again.
up. I'm just, you know, just,
Yeah,
ICE
make
doesn't
it make
show up.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, they don't show up, then they say, why should we? That's what they're saying
Well,
as it
I'm
relates
glad.
to.
I'm glad for this law because I think that we have a hard enough time. You can't just like when we get to the next topic that I want us to touch on. You cannot legislate people into being good people. And so when you have people who are breaking laws, that needs to be dealt with, especially heinous crimes like this. This is it's a disservice to our community when we say just going back out there and just we're not going to work with people to try and resolve this issue. That's just it's a danger and that's not okay.
You're right, Tish. I'm just, responding to your question that you have before us as it relates to ICE and as it relates to the sheriff. I think that
Right.
person that commit crime should be locked up, you know, there because
And there should be due process. Please don't get me wrong, Mr. Floyd. I don't think that due process is not valuable.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's all enough. Speaking of teach, not that you agree with something or disagree with something, but everyone
Hmm.
wants due process. Now, sometimes due process is good, and sometimes due process is bad for some people.
Absolutely.
So, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Ted, you got anything you want to add to that before we talk about this pistol permit repeal?
Not really. I mean, it passed, and now it's got to go over to the Senate, and then we'll see
Right.
if Governor Cooper vetoes it. Well, we don't know yet.
Okay. Speaking of which, they did repeal the veto. They overrode. Is that the right word? Overrode. They
Right.
overrode Governor Cooper's veto of the pistol permit repeal law. So, Mr. Floyd and Mr. Moan, what's y'all's take on? First of all, what's your take on? Because this is a little different for me. I have mixed emotions about this one because I don't think that people who commit crimes care about the law.
Hmm.
So I think laws affect law-abiding citizens. So in
Yeah.
this instance, mm, what do you guys think?
Well, when I listened to the debate, they were saying um, it's like duplicative,
Hmm.
because there's a new federal database when you go to pick purchase a shotgun or a pistol, you ran through that database.
Hmm.
And I know for Cumberland County, if you want to go for a concealed permit, for
Hmm.
5 years,
You have to
which
go
which
through a
I
whole process.
yep. So you still have to apply for it. They're going to take your fingerprints. They're going to do a locals records check. But they're saying for just a pistol, um, it's just like a shotgun. You still have to pay you know this gun store a fee, and they're going to look your name up in the national database. So I heard some of the people arguing for the bill saying it was it it, it just it's getting your name run twice, and some
Right.
sheriffs were faster than others and other sheriff departments were slower than others. So
Right.
yeah, but
And
it's
so,
law
see, and that
now.
makes sense. And I think sometimes when you hear that, Ted, it helps to be able to understand that, because the way that some of these articles are written, or the way that some information is brought back to the community, like, oh, well, anything goes now. Like, now there's no checks, there's no balances. You can
No,
just go get whatever you
no,
want and just pow pow. And
that's
that's
not true.
not the case. That's not
Yeah,
the case.
and also in the bill, if you have a concealed carry permit, they you know how some churches have schools on the same grounds.
My kid goes to one of
So
those. Yeah.
yeah, and so this law now allows when children are not in school, but you go to the church on the weekend, if you have a concealed carry permit, you can bring your weapon.
Right.
But in the past, you couldn't do that because of the church on the location. So there was
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
couple of the little things in that bill.
That makes sense. Mr. Floyd, you got anything you want to add to that? I got one more thing, y'all, before we wrap it up.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to talk about.
That it was there was three Democrats that was unable to attend the session that
That was
day.
Hmm.
convenient, right?
Three Democrats was unable to attend, and and under their new rules, I believe that the speaker can bring up a veto at any at any time. We as
Hmm.
legislators and former legislators, a wise person will provide to the speaker, I mean to the clerk, your presence,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're unable to attend a meeting, or if you will be late. And we all are not 100% healthy, so we are going to have appointment schedules that may be in conflict with
That may
our
conflict.
arrival. Because normally committees meet in the mornings, and the session usually occur in the afternoon. So you may miss a committee, but you may be able to make the session where votes are recorded. Votes are not recorded per se in committee meetings unless somebody called for, I forgot the terminology in there, but unless they call for a count instead of a
Mm-hmm.
voice vote, so
Well, I thought it was
that
very interesting how the News and Observer phrased that, Mr. Floyd,
Hmm.
because
well,
they made it very clear. They said the House has 120 members, but three House Democrats who have been willing to vote with Republicans on party line bills in the past weren't present Wednesday morning. Absences from Reps Cecil Brockman of Guilford County, Tricia Cotham of Mecklenburg County, and Michael Ray of Halifax County meant that the Republicans only needed 71 votes to override the veto, not 72.
yes,
Hmm.
I
That's
mean,
intentional.
now I wouldn't say it's intentional. I'm just saying,
It's
people
convenient.
have schedules and they have appointments, uh, and then there's everything else in between.
Yeah.
And so it provided the governor its first veto override, and there are going to be many more in the coming months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just hit an hour and I don't want to belabor our viewers' time. So let me ask you guys a question. Mr. Floyd, what do you want to leave our people with today?
Well, I think we had a good program, and I still don't think that we should go out here and talk about everybody. Just give people praise and accolades, for whatever suggestions and recommendations that they have and go for. So much good in the world.
Look, just give them an attaboy, attaboy.
Yeah, and go forward.
What about you, Ted? What you want to leave the people with?
I want to give Mayor Colvin actually some props. He put a
Give him his
member,
attaboy.
yeah. He put a council member request in Monday night to ask the council to consider adding one or more voting locations for early voting. Instead of just at one. For city council. And so
Great day in the morning. That's gonna take some people out trying to be able to staff a whole nother.
because for city council, it's only one early voting site, and so
Yeah, I think that's enough. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
I appreciate it for the people that want to do that, but I think that's enough. Trying to find people to work these polls is very difficult, and being able to duplicate yourself is hard. And I think one early voting place is enough because on voting day, you just go to where you're supposed to vote and go vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's just Tisha. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So y'all do what you want to do. Good. What? Attaboy, Mayor Colvin.
Now, my question to you and Ted as we exit: who is going to pay for it?
Okay, and that's the question.
It would be the city general fund, because
taxpayers.
The taxpayers. And in his request, he did say the Board of Elections said it roughly $28,000 for each early voting site. For
which is not. I mean, in the grand scheme of the whole budget, that's not that bad.
Mm-mm.
They're gonna spend that on the All-American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a finalist, so good luck.
Yeah. Well, that's the Gritty in the City and the Word on the Curb. We are your three co-hosts. I'm Tisha, that's Ted, and that's Elmer. And this is what we do. We try to make sure that you understand politics and that it's made simple. So make sure you like, subscribe, share, follow our YouTube page, listen to us wherever you get your major podcasts, and make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend, because you do not want your people to not know what's going on in the state that they live in. Listen, we joke, we laugh, but in all seriousness, what's going on in your community is your business. And if you are not on top of it, that's that. Have a great evening or morning or whatever time you're listening to this. I'm going to turn my camera off, guys, and hit the outro.
Are you looking for a real estate agent